Well, welcome to the scene of the crime. We have just conducted our NGO briefing event here in room 22 at Palais des Nations. So we have all of our name tags so you know who we are. Behind us, our lovely map of Australia on the screen. I think we're pretty happy with how it went. We had around 30 or 35 attendees, which is great. Would have been particularly embarrassing if we were all here ready to go, all formal and seated up at the desk behind us, and then no one here to eat all our sandwiches and listen to the tour. In terms of the format, we started by doing a brief presentation, around 20 minutes on, I guess we did a bit of a guided tour around Australia and looked at the major human rights issues to give everyone an overview, and then handed to each of us to speak to a little more of the further details. So what did you talk about, Liz?
We had a really good question from the audience in regards to women in prisons. So we spoke very briefly about that issue, and in particular, one of the comments we made was the high incidence of women who experience sexual assault. And in terms of the strip searches that are often required, that obviously that's re-traumatising victims of violence, and so sometimes this is impacting upon their relationship with their families, particularly their kids. So that was one of the issues that we were able to highlight. Other issues that we also spoke about were women in regards to being on boards and the need for high representation, and we also spoke again about the consolidation project and the need for enhanced protections under the Equality Act, and other issues including intersectional discrimination.
Well, I went straight to suggested recommendations that states could present on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander issues. There's a number of suggested recommendations that I presented. Perhaps the key ones were that Australia should revise this legal status in Australia, revise the laws, the policies, and particularly look at the Constitution to ensure that the rights of Indigenous peoples are enshrined in Australia's legal framework. And I also mentioned something about the national representative body, talking about what its strengths should be, that it should be a decision-making body, and it should have the capacity to negotiate with government and with local communities about decisions for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So there were a number of recommendations that were presented, but the key ones were there, and hopefully some of the governments that were in the room will go away and use those ideas to formulate some strong positions.
Well, we also spoke about a range of institutional issues, including the need to enact a comprehensive, enforceable Human Rights Act for Australia, and lamented the lack of political leadership that was shown by the Rudd-Gillard government in that regard following the National Human Rights Consultation. We talked about the need to develop institutional mechanisms to ensure the effective implementation of the views of United Nations human rights mechanisms, treaty bodies, special procedures in the Human Rights Council, including through extending the mandate of the proposed Joint Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights. We spoke about the lack of regulation and independent effective oversight mechanisms in areas such as police use of force and also prisons and places of detention. We gave some specific examples in that regard, such as the police shooting of a 15-year-old boy with mental illness. He was shot 9 times. In another dreadful incident, an Aboriginal man in custody was tasered 41 times in 7 days, clearly as a compliance and behavioural management tool rather than because the use of force was strictly necessary and a last resort as required under international law.
Luckily you're using this update just to continue the lobbying. Good work.
And we also talked about the need for Australia to pull its weight more on the international level, including by scaling up aid from the current commitment to 0.5% of GDP to 0.7% of GDP, and through better regulation of business and human rights.
So hopefully that's given you a little update of what happened here at the NGO.
I think we got a really good question, so it was showed that we're getting a lot of thought that's going into Australia's situation.
Indeed, there's lots of interaction. Maybe one of the other areas of questions that we received a couple on that we haven't touched on yet is what the level of collaboration has been between the Australian government and also between So there's more governments that are just coming in to try and get recommendations from us while we're talking. No, they were interested in some questions around the collaboration between the Australian government and our NGO coalition. So it's been good, I guess, to talk about what a good collaborative process that has been, but also some ways in which that could be improved, particularly for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders.
And it's also important to reiterate, although we have beforehand updates, that there have been significant comments from both missions and also other NGOs about the quality of materials that many of you contributed to, how concrete and targeted the recommendations are, how sophisticated the lobbying's been. So thank you very much for your contributions in that regard, and it's been a pleasure working with these absolutely outstanding human rights advocates.
So in terms of the rest of the week, just to give you a quick précis, it's Monday afternoon here. The UPR of Rwanda is happening at the moment, so we might pop up and obviously we're interested in human rights issues in Rwanda, but perhaps we can also catch a few delegates as they're walking in and out of the room to give them some further materials on Australia. The Australian Human Rights Commission is hosting their side event tomorrow at lunchtime, so we'll certainly get along to that and hopefully there'll be a good turnout. Then it's Australia Day or Invasion Day, Les, and then Thursday afternoon Geneva time we've got Australia's UPR appearance. So we look forward to providing you with a few more updates later on in the week and working towards hopefully some good recommendations that are made on Thursday afternoon.
We're still very busy, aren't we?
Yeah.